Yeah.
Okay. Okay, hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Career Labs. We are on season 2, episode 2, filmed on Easter. So happy Easter to all. Today we are incredibly honored to have Adrian on the podcast. He's an experienced cybersecurity practitioner and leader with 20 years in the financial services industry. Adrian, welcome aboard. And to kick things off, how about you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thanks, Eden. Thanks, Sean and Ben. It's a real pleasure to be here on your podcast today. And I just want to say I'm just very proud that you are taking charge of all these conversations, right? I think it's important that undergraduates, fresh graduates, which you will be in a couple of years, really understand what the different roles are available out there. I've been a cyber practitioner for about 20 years now, to your point earlier, across various banks. I mean, primarily in the financial services industry, right? So I graduated with a degree in computer engineering. This was okay, this is going to review my age, back in '04. Yeah, and I've been, like I said, working in the FSI space since across a number of roles in different banks, primarily in security engineering. So cybersecurity engineering was one. I did spend a number of years in risk management as well. And I moved into audit just about 2 years ago. Yeah,
Right.
that's me in a
Okay.
nutshell. Yeah.
Thanks for that. So I think I'll start us off with the big question, which is, what exactly is cybersecurity about?
Okay, let me try to unpack it in simple terms. Okay, I'm sure all of you transfer money every day, right? You go to a merchant, to a hawker, you make payment, you use PayNow, PayLah, tools of your choice. So, there's a lot happening in the background to ensure that only you can have access to your funds and that the funds end up in the right place. So what happens in between? There are hundreds of transactions in the background securing that one transaction that you make through your phone. If you think about, in a university context, you've got a number of key systems as well, right? Your examination systems, your research papers, your repository of documents published by your professors. So all these are critical systems, and it's really all about the protection of information in these key systems. Yep. And sorry, did you mention risk as well, Sean? Or was it just cybersecurity?
No, but yeah, feel free to touch on risk as well.
Okay. So cybersecurity, it's a technical discipline, right? So risk is the lens through which we prioritize our efforts. I mean, if companies had unlimited funds, if banks or institutions had unlimited resources, then we're going to secure everything, right? We're going to make sure that the device you use is armed to the teeth, that you have the latest device. Applications are developed with the best practices out there in the industry. We've got state-of-the-art tools in the banks, or any institutions that you work with, but that's not possible. It's always a balance between, I mean, a prioritization of resources, right? I mean, you have to allocate resources somewhere else as well. So this is the lens through which we prioritize. We understand, or at least we try to understand what the regulatory frameworks are out there. And then we ensure that, I mean, we generally we prioritize, right? So like MAS, for example, in Singapore, MAS is our central bank. Are you familiar with them? Yeah, the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Likewise, where banks operate in other locations like HKMA in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, they have got certain regulations as well when it comes to cyber. And it's really about ensuring that there's a right balance between risk versus controls. Yeah.
I see. It sounds like you're doing a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a space that is very dynamic, I would say. I mean, when I first started out in 2004, cyber was a term that was not very, it was a pretty much unheard of, right? It was very niche. Not many practitioners were in this space. I think I would say in the last 10 or 15 years, that was when we have seen quite a number of regulators, especially in the region, come up with their own cybersecurity frameworks, prescribing exactly what institutions. I mean, I'm from the banking space, right? So, like banks, for example, what kind of controls have to be in there when you process customer transactions, for example, or when you send email out to customers, what are the controls that have to be in place? When you talk about like anti-money laundering systems, what controls would have to be in place as well. So it's a very regulated space, And like I said, only in the last 10 or 15 years did we see a real hive of activity in this space. And I guess that's what makes it very interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh
And
yeah,
then
as
back
you
to what I said
mentioned.
earlier about,
Oh,
sorry, Ben.
sorry, I cut you off. Please, please.
Yeah, I mean, so back to what I said earlier about risk being the lens through which we prioritize our efforts. I mean, naturally, for regulatory requirements, they have. I mean, we have to conform with those, right? And in banking, it's very well prescribed. It's very well documented. Unfortunately, or unfortunately, it's all about finances and how do we ensure the security of these transactions. So naturally, it's really all about prioritization of efforts and ensuring that all these requirements are met. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, as you mentioned, I think cybersecurity is a pretty new thing. It was quite niche about 10 to 15 years ago. So our question would be, was this something that you decided to get into earlier on or later on in life?
Uh, I graduated in '04, and I would say my first job um, actually exposed me to cybersecurity already. So back then I was with this startup. So it did expose me to a very broad domain of cybersecurity expertise. So cybersecurity is not a very esoteric concept, but there are many domains that you should be familiar with. I mean, take for example, like identity and access management. You talk about identities, take a house, for example. I mean, you control who accesses your home. You know where the doors are. You know the pin to your locks. Um, and then you also want to be sure that who's coming in and out of your house. You've got knowledge of that as well, right? Yeah. So um, back then, 2004, like I say, it was fairly niche, and I think there was quite a fair bit of digitalization. So I mean, a lot of services were transitioning online, even banking as well. I mean, I grew up in an era where we had to go to the bank to withdraw money, right? And I mean, these days, who visits a branch? Or not many people would visit a branch just to withdraw money. You can perform many of your transactions online, and this wasn't very prevalent, I would say, when I first graduated. So over the last, like I said, 15, 20 years was when, you've got like streaming services, even your music as well. Right? I grew up in the analog age where we had cassette tapes, we had compact discs. Yeah, but these days everything's streaming. You've got Apple Music, you've got Spotify and all that. Yeah, so that was when cybersecurity became a real concern for everyone. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of the various breaches that have happened over the last 10, 15 years. So there have been many high profile ones affecting not just the small SMEs, but large corporations as well. Like even Microsoft has not been spared. SolarWinds, you might have heard. Yeah, so there's been a fair share of hacks and fraudulent activity in that space.
Wow. Let's backtrack a bit to talk about a bit about your uni days. You
Yeah,
said, as you mentioned earlier, you studied computer engineering at NTU.
yeah.
I'm wondering whether is what you learned in uni, like, was it directly relevant to what you do today, or was there a lot of on the job training? Because you mentioned, uh, the area that you're in 10, 15 years ago is really, really niche. So maybe you could
Correct.
talk about a bit about your time in NTU and maybe the core structures, if you still remember, maybe any clubs or hackathons, stuff that maybe could have driven you towards what you're doing today.
Okay. I mean, I've always been interested in technology, right, since I was a kid. So back then it was about really understanding how systems worked. But I guess during my varsity days, I was also interested in finding out how systems would break. It's not just about building systems, but really also understanding how adversaries can break systems. So that really got me interested in cybersecurity, right? Um, so I mean, in university, let's be honest, they're not going to teach you everything that you need to know, right? And with the knowledge half-life now being so short, just look at AI for instance. Just 3 years ago, everyone was talking about ChatGPT. Today it's Claude. Who knows what tomorrow is going to bring. So I think in university it's really about giving you the skills to understand problems. So I think in university I was taught to break down systems into different components and then understanding how components would work, and at the same time understanding how components would break as well. And like I said, with the advent of digitalization, with everything going online, there was a real proliferation of cybersecurity risks, right? And that was when I saw, hey, there's going to be a huge demand for cybersecurity professionals. And like I said, it's a fairly technical field, and I guess the advantage is knowing how to bridge the gap between cybersecurity and business risk. Each time, you could say something like, oh, we've got this vulnerability in the system. This system is not secure. You've got an unpatched flaw in my application, in your banking app, for example. The business will be asking, so what's that to us? What's that going to mean to us? How is it going to impact our customers? So I think early on in those days, I did see that there was a need to really translate the technical knowledge into business risk and make it, I guess, digestible for stakeholders. Yeah, I think that's where you can really add value, right? Anyone looking to come into this field, I think if you can bridge that gap between cybersecurity, which can be, like I said, a bit esoteric to people out there, and then somehow connect the dots and explain in plain language what it means to the business, to customers, then that's where you can really value add. Yeah.
Ask, right? Because you mentioned early on, AI literacy is very important today, and as AI becomes more and more prominent, does that also
Correct.
mean that your role in cybersecurity becomes more important along with it? Because AI itself presents a lot of security risks, right? I'm sure you've heard of OpenClaw and the security
Yeah.
risks that come along with that. So how is your job scope changing in that sense, or evolving with AI?
Okay, AI risk is a space that's constantly evolving. So, okay, you did mention two different terms, right? AI literacy and AI risk. I think I'll address both separately. So, AI literacy is, I think before we started this podcast, I was just mentioning that it's important, it's something that employers would look out for, right? So, by AI literacy, it's not about whether you are proficient at using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. It's really about, are you able to discern the outputs from what the AI tool is giving to you? And are you able to judge if human intervention is required? Are you able to decide, okay, maybe the AI should handle this bit of my work, and the other aspects, this is where we need the human in the loop. And then am I also in a position where I'm comfortable challenging the assumptions, the outputs from the AI? Am I able to detect hallucinations, stuff like that? I think that's really part of developing that whole AI literacy. Not just simply using Gemini as a glorified Google search engine. And then now there's a lot of talk about agentic AI, right? So it's really about using AI to augment your work. And unfortunately, teams out there, they are downsizing, right? Given how prevalent AI has become. So it has unfortunately replace some of the more junior or entry level roles out there. So I think it's very important, right, to really demonstrate that value. You've got that edge, not just simply using AI, but knowing exactly how and when it should be used. Using AI to orchestrate your work, like creating agents to automate or augment certain parts of the work, like audit workflow, for example. Some parts are automated, but it's still a lot of relationship management. There's still a lot of stakeholder communication that has to happen, something that AI cannot replace. Yeah, so it's important that you build your skills, your soft skills in those areas, I would say. Stakeholder management, and back to what I said earlier, right, about what's the real risk to the business, right? You've got this technical finding, this technical problem. What does it actually mean to the business? I think if you can articulate that to stakeholders, to regulators, to the audit committee, for example, then you'll be a superstar. Yeah. And AI risks, I mean, it's not new. Since ChatGPT came along, there have been quite a number, right? Privacy concerns. You've got model biasness, right? So these are things that you have to factor into your decision. So back to AI literacy, it's really about understanding how the model has been trained, right? Was it trained on a set of data, on a very specific set of data, so the outputs that it gives you are biased? Things like that you have to bear in mind as well. Privacy concerns, hallucinations. Yeah, so these are AI risks that have to be considered in whenever it's used in your line of work. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Just to circle back a bit, right?
Yeah.
Just now you mentioned about bridging the gap between something to like cybersecurity. So I think it's like there's this stereotype that, or not like stereotype, but there's this thinking that once you enter cybersec, you're gonna be in cybersec for like the rest of your life. So is that true, or is there like other opportunities to explore, other career paths once you entered cybersecurity?
Is it true? I mean, it very much depends on the individual, right? So for me, it's something that I'm very passionate about. And, given how dynamic it is, I mentioned the last 10, 15 years, that was when we have seen quite a number of, like regulators in the banking space in the region really jump on the bandwagon, develop their own cyber frameworks. And it's not easy, right? They have hundreds, if not thousands, of prescribed regulations on how we should be conducting our businesses, how we should be developing our applications, how we should be transacting with customers. So if this is what keeps you on your toes, if you like being living life on the edge, then I would say cybersecurity is definitely for you. I spent 20 years. I'm still fairly technical myself because I think it's important, right? Now, I mean, I do manage teams, operate at a more strategic level, where you start thinking about, is this the right approach versus just doing it, right? Or when you first start out in your career. So I think it's really important to have that technical know-how to maintain that technical accuracy, I would say. Yeah, because if not, how are you going to have I guess conversations with the stakeholders? You need to be able to speak the same language as well, understand their concerns, the constraints, and coming in from a practitioner's point of view, it does help a fair bit. Yeah. So is it for everyone? I would say no. But if you are someone who is interested in staying abreast of these things, like to get your hands dirty, your feet wet, understanding how systems break and how you can defend your critical infrastructure against such adverse threats, then yeah, it's definitely for you. Yeah. I mean, you must have heard, right? It's not just for banks, even for our telecommunication providers, Singtel, M1, StarHub. They're being designated as core or critical infrastructure providers, right? They're providing key services to the community, right? So healthcare, you've got telco services, you've got utilities. Yeah, they all have their own critical infrastructure as well. So cybersecurity is not just something that's confined to banking or one specific sector. It's industry agnostic, I would say. So the skill sets are very transferable. I think that's one key advantage. If anyone's considering to enter the field, should bear in mind. Yeah.
Wow, I totally agree. And I think it's pretty refreshing to hear that cybersecurity is more flexible than what people think it really is. Now, maybe moving a bit into your career,
Yeah.
looking at your LinkedIn, I think there's a lot of scrolling involved because there's just a lot of things
Is that why I've
on
had
your
so many hits
LinkedIn.
today?
Yeah, I would
Okay.
say it's pretty stacked. But yeah, looking at your career progression, I mean, you progress from a software security engineer to a senior engineer, and then you slowly moved up and up the value chain. And I would say, as of now, you are probably on top of the value chain. So, how was that journey like in terms of your career progression? And what is some advice that you would give, maybe like teenagers like us about moving up the ranks?
Okay, I would say be very deliberate about making your career choices. So, I would tell anyone who asks me, your first job is very important because it's really the one that determines your career trajectory to a certain extent, right? You'd spend quite a fair bit of time in that first role. And I guess in the early years, you really should be focused on building not only just the technical depth. I mean, be it business analytics, cybersecurity, financial modeling, what have you, right? It's really about building that domain expertise because what you learned in school, it's like I said, domain half-life, knowledge half-life is really short, could really be out of date. So you really need to understand how the industry does it, what are the best practices out there, That's your technical debt that you have to establish, right? And at the same time, you should also find opportunities to give yourself exposure to like stakeholders, right? Engage with them. In my work, I speak to CISOs, to technical CTOs, technical officers, risk managers. So it's really about building that network, that relationship with different people, different lines of businesses to give you that different perspective. It would be great if you get overseas stints as well, because that really gives you a very international kind of perspective on many different things, especially when it comes to cybersecurity, right? It's a borderless threat, but it's actually interesting to see how different governments, different financial regulators are, they've got slightly different approaches to what's the same problem. So like I said, be deliberate about your career choices. Find something that will give you not only just exposure to the technical depth, but also provide opportunities to broaden your scope as well when it comes to like stakeholder management and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like a lot. So I think I'm gonna sort of maybe bring it down to some, from the perspective of someone like us, year one students in university. I'm sure you have experience in this area, but how important do you think internships are, especially in the corporate world, in terms of, because a lot of people say that your
Yeah.
degree is only useful for your first job, right? And then from there, it's your experience that gets you further. So what is your take on that?
Okay, so I've seen how things have changed as well, right, over the last 5-10 years, and it's been quite dramatic. I mean, to your point, Aidan, I would say a degree is necessary but no longer sufficient. That's the real hard truth. Now employers, I mean, not just me, but when you seek out jobs, they tend to look at your portfolio, right? Not just what you've done outside school or outside academia, but have you actually invested time in developing your core skill set? Have you found roles which could be relevant to your field of study, for example? We do look out for that. I mean, these days, like I said, the bar has been raised so high, right? We expect fresh grads to hit the ground running. So you come in, you talk about business analytics, right? So it's a very competitive job market out there. And unfortunately, with the advent of AI, the hiring out right now is a lot more strategic. So they want to be able to see what kind of value you can add from day one. Hence, it's important to build that AI literacy, as I did mention earlier, to really demonstrate that you've got some real practical hands-on experience in whatever roles that you might be applying for. I mean, take audit, for example. I would tend to look out for graduates with some hands-on experience or exposure to data analytics, right? I mean, but the reality is that fresh graduates don't have a lot of experience, but it does set you apart if you have done something which sets you apart from the rest, so to speak. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So speaking of auditing, right? So forgive me if I'm mistaken, but you actually went from building sort of cybersec into auditing it. So could you maybe touch on like what's the difference between those two jobs, like from building the system to now auditing other systems?
Okay. 20 years. It's a long time. Also, maybe before I get there, I'll speak about the three line of defense model. I'm not sure if it's a term that's familiar to any one of you. Heard of the three lines of defense?
Can't say I have.
Okay. Aiden, Ben, and none as well, right? Okay. Many years ago, it was a concept that was maybe quite prevalent in the financial services industry, but these days it's industry agnostic. The first line of defense is where you build systems. So I started out in the first line as well. Like you're a control owner, you build like for example an email security system to put things simply, right? So you're responsible for ensuring that emails arrive at the correct recipient, that it's encrypted before it's sent. So you are responsible for building and engineering that whole system, right? And putting in designing robust controls as well to ensure that no one has access to your emails when they don't have access. I mean, no one inappropriate has access to your emails, right? To put it simply. So that's the first line of defense. The second line of defense is where risk comes in, right? The risk management. So in banks, many business units, you have like the financial analyst, right? Or they will be responsible for the controls in the first line. The risk would then come in to check and challenge, right? to ensure that there is proper oversight and adequate oversight over some of these risks that have been identified within the first line. So that's your second line of defense. Third line is where audit sits. So as audit, we provide independent assurance to what the first line and second line have provided in terms of like control assurance. Yeah, so this model is quite common right now, not just in banking, but across many industries as well. So I started on the first line of defense. In fact, I spent most of my career in the first line building systems, working with vendors, ensuring that we've got bespoke solutions in the first line. I did spend a number of years as well in risk, so working auditing third parties, ensuring that vendors we work with are held to a certain standard, right? When it comes to like even cybersecurity, financial viability, they've got the right controls in place as well. Before I moved into the third line just 2 years ago. So I think it's very important, right, to have, or at least it was a real advantage for me to have spent quite a bit of my career in the first line of defense, because I don't speak the same lingo. When I'm auditing some of my stakeholders, I do speak the same language. We've got no issues, I guess, understanding each other, technical terms and all that. And I think more importantly, I'm able to see some of the challenges as well. Now, I've designed systems, I've built systems, I've been involved in global projects. I know where the pain points are. I know where the challenges are. I know the shortcuts that can be taken, right? Sometimes just to ensure time to market. So it's really having that perspective, which I think is very helpful in my current third line of defense work, which is auditing. You can then have reasonable discussions with the stakeholders. They know that you understand their point of view, which I think is key to building that rapport, that level of trust between the first and the third line of defense.
Wow, that's really insightful. Okay, currently you are an executive director at a major financial institution. So maybe you could touch on about what a day-to-day is like in your life right now.
Day to day. Okay, I would say maybe no 2 days are alike. So I do manage a team of auditors who were responsible for ensuring that the control operators, the first line of defense, right, have designed and robust controls. The controls are operating effectively. The controls are doing what they say they would do. The controls are mitigating risk. So we do have a couple of audits every year. So in my role, I have to prioritize the work, right? So it really depends on what the threat lens is telling me or what the threat landscape is telling me. So years ago, it was like denial of service attacks. It was like website defacement. More recently, it's like phishing campaigns. You've got like fraud. You've got scam calls, and lots of funds have been lost that way. You've got third-party risk as well, which I think it's not a new thing, but it's ever-present, omnipresent risk, right? Being a large organization, you deal with a lot of third parties, right? Third parties that also provide services to your customers. And fortunately, unfortunately, all regulators would require all organizations, right, to have proper and adequate oversight over the third parties as well. It doesn't mean that, okay, if I outsource maybe my credit card embossing to you, right? Or printing of customer statements, if I outsource it to someone, then I absolve myself of any responsibility if there are any data breaches and stuff. So it doesn't work that way. You might have heard it was in the news, right? Quite recently. I'm not going to name the banks, but some banks have lost customer statements. They were breached and all. So it's important to have that kind of third-party oversight over some of our vendors. So given that the prevalence of supply chain risk over the last few years, we've spent a bit more time. So I've asked, the audit teams to spend a bit more time on third parties, ensuring that the right controls are in place. Cloud services also it's been around for quite some time, but increasingly, lots of services are transitioning into the cloud. Like I said, like streaming services, even your HR systems, right? These days, it's not uncommon to find that many companies have moved from what used to be like an SAP or an on-premise system into like Workday, which is in the cloud. So all your data is managed by a vendor, up there in the cloud. So it's really ensuring that we prioritize our auditing efforts in that space as well. And again, with the AI also now being one of the emerging risks, it's really ensuring that we spend some time in that space as well.
Well, it sounds like your day to day is really interesting. Like no 2 days are like I like that phrase. But maybe you could touch a bit on when you were still a junior, when you still in your younger days, as like a worker or like you just following orders. Was it different? Was your day to day every single day the same thing?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, thinking back, it was remarkably different, right? Because you had a list of tasks that you would have to accomplish back then. As starting out your career, you would be busy learning, building relationships. You're always given projects to focus on. So your deliverables were very clear, right? Get A done, get B done, get C done, following which there will be D and F. But these days, at a more strategic level, it's really like back to what I said about prioritizing efforts, right? Really ensuring that the audit team not just does the analysis, but you then start the question: is this even the right analysis to begin with? For instance, is really about working with stakeholders, understanding what their key concerns are, right? Like you speak to the business, you speak about financial fraud, and like cybersecurity is often part of the conversations as well, right? So really understanding what are their pain points. Is it transport security? Is it encryption? Is it fraud measures? Is it multi-factor authentication? Stuff like that. Then that's when you start to then work this into your audit plan as well. So it's really, I mean, these days it's really all about, like I said, prioritizing the efforts, really understanding what the threat landscape is, and then ensuring that our audit plan is fit for purpose. It's nimble enough to also take into account any emerging threats that might surface. Yeah, so I'd say it's different here. Yeah, in that way. So these days, a lot more strategic conversations about the direction we should take. And like I said, with the advent of AI, it's also my responsibility to ensure that the team improves its way of working, right? Not just don't disregard the tools. I think really understand what the limitations of these tools are, how it can help in their day-to-day work, for instance, but how do we use this in a responsible and safe manner? I think that's a question that many organizations are still struggling with, and that's where leadership comes in to then make the call, right? Design the right safeguards, the necessary guardrails as well, to ensure that it's usage of these tools are safe and responsible. Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. So
Yeah.
maybe more of a practical question now. So what I want to know is like, how is your work-life balance like, especially being in like tech/finance, which is known for like kind of grueling work hours, especially in like the junior roles, right? So
Yeah.
maybe you could touch on like how your work-life balance is, not only like now, but maybe as you were still like progressing up the ranks.
I see. Okay. Well, it's a big question. Where should I start? Okay, work-life balance, I would say, is quite personal. And obviously, it also depends on the company culture, the organizational culture, your team culture, the department culture and all that. But personally, I believe in work-life integration. What that means is that, as long as the work gets done, be on a Saturday or Sunday, not so fast about where it's getting done from, right? So it's really about, I can be at home, like remote working is now is commonplace, right? Hybrid working models. So no longer is it necessary for you to be in the office to get something accomplished, for example. So it's really all about planning your schedule and planning your day. Obviously, it's important to be on site when you meet with stakeholders. I think nothing can replace that face-to-face interaction you have with not only your team members, your managers, your stakeholders, your bosses, and all that, your customers. yeah, so it's really about prioritizing your work schedule. I mean, for me, I make time for my own personal pursuits, gym, cycling, traveling. So work-life balance really is varies from organization to organization. If you work for a US multinational company, and I've worked for US banks before, and to your point, the hours can be quite grueling. I mean, there were nights when I've had calls till 11 or 12, 1 a.m., and you're still expected to be in the office at 9 a.m. the next day. Yeah, yeah. So it's really knowing how to take, those mental breaks and making use of pockets of time that are made available to you throughout the day. I think that's how I try to achieve work-life balance as well. Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of good. Yeah. I mean, I
That's
used to
great to
joke, like,
hear.
work-life balance is 12 hours at home, 12 hours in the office. That's work-life balance. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
12-hour days.
No, I mean that's not true. But work-life integration, right? Like it doesn't matter. I mean, with the connectivity options these days, you can work off your iPad, you can work off your MacBook, you can work when you are watching a soccer match, for example, your kids concert, your kids play, you can fire off email. So it's really about integrating work and life in, together in that sense. Yeah.
I think it's great to hear that you still find time for your own personal pursuits, and I think that's quite remarkable. Maybe could you share more about the current job market now for tech and cybersecurity? Because if we're looking at the employment survey that recently came out, it seems like cybersecurity still enjoys a pretty high employment rate. So, do you think it is true that cybersecurity is so-called recession-proof, as they say?
Is it recession proof? I mean, for many years, I thought it was recession proof. Okay, so back to what I said earlier, I mean, cybersecurity is something which is industry agnostic, right? I mean, if you work in healthcare, you work in pharma, you work in petrochemicals, you work in telecommunications, cybersecurity is an omnipresent threat. It's borderless, right? So, and again, with the increasing number of services in the cloud, with the increasing number of services being digitalized, cybersecurity is one field that is not going to go away. Yeah, if anything, it's kept us awake at night. It's going to keep us even busier, right? With AI now emerging, I mean, adversaries are using AI to automate execution of malware. I mean, at the same time, we're also using AI to automate certain things. So in terms of employability, you're asking about employability, right? It's I would say yes, the demand will be there for the foreseeable future. I mean, I read somewhere recently that globally there are over 4 million open positions in cybersecurity. Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, some developed markets might have more open roles than others. Yeah, so I would say the opportunities are definitely there, but how do you then set yourself? How do you then set your skill set apart from everyone else out there? And that's really to build, like I said, a good portfolio of skills. So that not just includes internships, which is something that employers are increasingly looking out for these days in relevant roles, right? But also to demonstrate business equity, acumen in certain areas. You've had, I mean, you've not just worked on projects, right? But you have sold an idea to management. You have successfully launched a product. You have made presentations to the audit committee, to a regulator, things like that, which would help set you apart from the rest. I think it's important to build that skill set from day one, and not wait until you get pushed into a managerial position or once you're in a leadership position. It's your responsibility, so you have to take charge of that career development, I would say.
Wow, it certainly sounds like you're speaking from experience. So I
Yeah.
think then I have to pivot and I have to ask, right? Given that you've been through all of this, which phase was your favorite? As in, which is the most enjoyable, the most stressful, from the time you just graduated to where you are now?
Most stressful. Which part I enjoyed the most? Whenever I'm on vacation, I guess. No, I mean, I mean, this is a field that's very dynamic. Back to my point earlier, it's every day you hear about breaches, you hear about scams, you hear about organizations being breached, data being lost. So it does keep you on your toes, right? How are we secure? Be it whatever organization I might be working for or with, are we secure? Have we done enough? Do we need to do more? What used to look good 5 years ago, I can tell you it's not sufficient today, right? So you might have won an award. Your company might have won an award for most secure organization, right? But today, is it enough? I would say no. It's so that's, I would say, that the stressful bit. Just keeping abreast of technology, understanding the threat landscape. No 2 months or no 2 days are alike, to be honest. Then yeah, I would say that's probably if the stressful part of things, but enjoy it. I mean, yes, because I have passion for learning. I enjoy learning. I enjoy, like I said, getting my hands wet, my hands dirty, my feet wet, understanding the nuts and bolts of technology. So yeah, there's definitely enough to keep me busy. And what I was talking about earlier, right? University is where your learning journey. I mean, your learning journey is not going to stop when you graduate. It's all about pursuing certifications, all about staying relevant, and learning or education is a lifelong journey. I can tell. Even today, I'm still learning. Yeah, just last year, I was at NUS, right, for a workshop on quantum computing. For financial services. Yeah, so cryptography, something you're familiar with, encryption, right? So
Yeah,
like
I
I
heard
would
of it.
say, yeah. So when you and your encryption, like even Bitcoin, right? So they're saying Bitcoin encryption might be broken by quantum computers. It's a real risk. Might happen. Some people say 5, but I think most experts would say it's about 10 years when commercially viable quantum computers come onto the market, where it's about 10 years time. So it's really about keeping ahead of these things, understanding whether what we have in place, because cryptography, encryption is something that secures everything. Your internet transactions, when you pay someone, right, that traffic that goes through the internet is encrypted with RSA, for example. You send secure email, is also encrypted with RSA. So we're saying that these could be broken in the next 5-10 years, and it's really about understanding, is that threat, and how much time we've got to prepare for it, and ensuring that we have the right controls in place to secure financial transactions for the foreseeable future.
I asked is that in cybersecurity, there's like, forgive me if I'm wrong, but there's like this sort of like 24/7 guy on hold, like just in case like something happens to like the servers or whatnot, right? So
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
does that apply to like have you been in that role before, or like maybe you can touch a bit on how is it like?
Okay, I guess
Because
what
I'm
you're
sure it's like
describing
super
would be
stressful.
super stressful. Okay, I guess what you're describing would be like the security operations center, right? So every large organization usually has a security operations center that would monitor, all the systems to ensure that they are up, that nothing looks out of the ordinary, right? Banks have them, large companies have them. So I would say they're usually shifts. So we've got, not sure if you've heard of like follow the sun model. So if you're a large enough company, you would probably have operations in many parts of the world. So in Asia, there would be a security operations center. So I did work for a US bank before. So that was how it was set up. And likewise, many other organizations have the same setup, right? Especially if you are, a firm or institution with a global presence. So Asia would do the monitoring, right? Security monitoring during Asia hours. And then following which, by end of day, there's usually a handoff to the UK. So there's 1 hour, right? You would have a call with the UK folks, your counterparts in London, for example, talk about any open cases that might need their help in resolution or in resolving any thing, any threats of interest that they might have to follow up on. And then likewise, UK would then have the same conversation with the US when they come online, and then US would then hand it back to Asia when we come online in the morning. So yeah, I mean, you don't have to be at at your desk 24/7. I think that's a common misconception. And to be honest, these days, again with AI, with automation, alerts can be detected, and you get page out systems, right? You get alerts on your handphone, or on the application that there is something that requires human intervention, or judgment call, and that's when you can then process those events outside the office.
Right. Because
Yeah.
that was actually like what my thought process was like. It's like those like doctors that get called up to the A&E at like midnight or something. It's like something like that.
Yeah. I mean, again, it varies from company to company, but I mean, it does happen, especially if you're the key personnel, or if it's an area for which you are responsible of. You could be the team manager, and yeah, you might get called up. Or if it's a global cybersecurity incident. I mean, like I said earlier, cybersecurity is borderless, right? Doesn't mean that hackers or adversaries will only operate in your time zone. Yeah, you could have an attack, say, originating in the US. It's going to be wee hours of the morning for us here, right? That is impacting our systems here in Asia. So yes, then naturally there would be a need for the team here to be activated as well, right? To contain, to assess, to respond and recover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think that clears up the misconception about about cybersecurity.
Okay.
Um,
Good. Any other misconceptions I can help clear up? So I mean, while we're at it. Yeah. I mean,
maybe one
interesting.
about the general recruitment process for fresh graduates. Maybe some tips about how we can stand out, or some things that you specifically look for in our resume, for example.
Uh, for fresh grads, or for people who have been in the industry for maybe 2 or 3 years, junior staff,
Maybe
fresh
for
grads.
for both. Yeah, but
Okay.
I would
So
say that for our viewers, we are probably more interested in fresh graduates.
fresh grads, right? Okay. So I guess back to what I said earlier about really building your portfolio, not just demonstrating what you've done outside, like where you have volunteered, or what you have done in church, or your CCAs. I think all that's important. It shows that you are holistic person, but also focus on internships, right? On apprenticeships that give you exposure to your field of study, um, and also seek out opportunities that will give you broad exposure, not just that technical depth, right? Which is also very important. Exposure in the sense that you've interacted with senior stakeholders, uh, you have launched a product in the market, you have helped generate sales revenue, something that is tangible, something which is meaningfully contributes to what it is that you are applying for, because it then demonstrates that you can hit the ground on day one. You can hit the ground running on day one, and not just someone who is just theoretical. Right? You can apply. You've got practical skills. You can apply your knowledge in that job right away. Yeah, that's one. And I'd say for junior staff, it's good to see that that there is some pattern of lifelong education, right? There are lots of certifications out there. I mean, for cybersecurity, you've got CISP, which is Certified Information System Security Provider. It's a good certification to have. It's a globally recognized one. So you see it on many cyber practitioners LinkedIn page. You'll come across some CISSP. You also come across certifications from CISA. So that's if you are more into control auditing, designing controls. So it's good to pursue some of these certifications. I mean, likewise, if you're in accountancy, you want to be so you've got CFA, you've got CPA, and all that, right? So CISP, CISA, CISM, these are all akin to what you have in that space. So it's important to also build up that domain of knowledge, and you can very easily demonstrate it by having a couple of relevant certifications in place, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. So I've got like a follow-up question, which is, not really a follow-up question, but rather one term that that's been reoccurring or recurring in our
Yeah.
conversation is learning to talk to sort of these stakeholders. So would you say
Yeah.
like that would be more important than your raw technical skill, or rather, would you say there's like a sort of ceiling that you hit with just raw technical skill in cybersec?
I mean, there are a couple of tracks these days. Like, I mean, you've got the specialist track. I mean, there are people who enjoy just getting their hands dirty, feet wet all the time. You know, nuts and bolts, coding, software development, and there are many organizations have carved out career tracks, right, for these specialists as well. So there's no saying that, oh, you know, you have to be a manager to you know, to make it, or to earn a bit more than, say, someone who's on a specialist track, right? And does that answer your question? What was the second part of your question?
Oh, I was just wondering if there was like a sort of ceiling for progression that you reach by
Ceiling
if
for
you just focus
progression,
on skill.
I would say for
Yeah.
organizations that are progressive. Okay, let's take a tech firm, for example. I know, like Google, Meta, uh, Anthropic, right? OpenAI. I mean, it's important to have that pool of knowledge, right? That, you know, really professional engineers, you know, people who know the ins and outs of the system, and these people are paid top dollar as well, right? Because they are in a way responsible for how the whole product functions. Yeah. So if you're talking about seeding, I would say for progressive companies, for companies that depend heavily on technology, I wouldn't think so, right? And you know, even as what if you're on a management track, then it's very important to also have that technical depth, right? And you know, if you can have, back to what I said earlier about, you know, bridging the gap between technology space and the business space, you know, if you're someone who can do that very effectively, if you're someone who can operate in ambiguity, who can really distill it for senior management, then yeah, you'll be a superstar. Yeah.
I think that's very, very interesting. So I think we're approaching the 1 hour mark. So I think to
Yeah.
cap it off, I have one last question. And this is not, you know, it's a different kind of question. So I
Yeah.
want you to perhaps imagine that that you are speaking to someone who is interested in tech, and you maybe has considered is considering cybersecurity as a potential path. So what advice would you give, right? Maybe as a senior or as someone who's been in the industry for so long, what advice do you have to give someone to maybe let him know that, you know, the industry is for him, maybe the industry is not for him, that kind of stuff? Yeah.
Okay. I think it would very much depend on the person's interest, right? So are you I know, have you always been interested in understanding how systems work? You know, are you the sort of person who like enjoys taking things apart, figuring out how all the components hang together, you know, function as a complete whole? Are you interested in understanding how things break, for example? Are you interested in building robust controls, right? To defend against threat actors, adversaries, and all that. I mean, if you are, you know, if you enjoy understanding technicalities, then I would say cybersecurity is definitely for you. If you're someone who enjoys having conversations as well, right, with business stakeholders, helping them understand what are the risks that they are facing, then yeah, I mean, cybersecurity is definitely for you as well. I mean, having that technical skill set definitely helps. It does build a very strong foundation for you. But at the same time, you know, if you are the kind of person who also enjoys working with the business, helping them understand where their risks are, and how you can help secure their solutions, then there's also a lot of value in that. Yeah. In fact, if you can operate in both space, then that's where you know, you're really a star player, I would say. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. It's very interesting and insightful, and I think I've learned a lot in the past hour. Thank you for your
Yeah,
time
it's
today,
been great
Adrian.
speaking with all of you
Yeah.
as well.
Sean, Ben.
Hey, thanks for making it to the end of this video. If you have enjoyed it, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and follow us on our socials on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify in the links in the description down below. And see you in the next video.